So Sony's CEO has spoken. He's come out and said basically that he can't understand why Madam Web and Kraven both failed at the box office. He just doesn't get it. He thinks Kraven is a pretty good movie. Now, while I can't speak on Kraven because I haven't seen it yet, I can certainly speak on Madam Web, and Madam Web was not a very good movie. I mean, granted, it was back in like February, March when I saw it, and yeah, not good. So there's a few articles here that I'm going to pull some stuff from. First one being from Business Insider. Emon Jacobs put this out there. Sony Pictures CEO blamed the failure of Kraven and Madam Web on bad reviews. These are not terrible films. Well, all I gotta say is Tony Vinscara, that's the CEO of Sony Pictures. I have a recommendation for you, Tony. If you want to build a Spider-Verse, include Spider-Man. I know you have a handshake deal with Marvel, to allow Spider-Man to be part of the MCU. But when you're trying to put out movies that are villains, not anti-heroes, like you tried to make Kraven an anti-hero, Kraven is one of Spider-Man's biggest adversaries in the comics. Why would you not make a Spider-Man movie with Kraven in it? I bet it would draw box office if you did. Madam Web. I don't know. Why don't you follow Madam Web from the comics and include Spider-Man in Madam Web? I bet it would draw box office, but you didn't do it. Let's even go back a little bit further. Morbius, starring Jared Leto. Remember how I still haven't seen Morbius. I don't know if I want to see it, so I cannot comment on the movie itself. But based on the numbers, Morbius is another adversary of Spider-Man. I don't know. Make a movie with Spider-Man and Morbius in it together. Stop trying to reinvent the wheel. Sony Pictures had a formula with Tobey Maguire in his 3 Spider-Man films. Sony Pictures had a formula with Andrew Garfield and The Amazing Spider-Man and The Amazing Spider-Man 2. They never got to 3. It was canceled. Don't know if it'll ever be made. So you couldn't follow the same formula with Tom Holland? Just asking the question. So let's go dive into the article here, shall we? Sony's owned the rights to Spider-Man and other superhero characters since buying them from Marvel in the 1990s. In 2017, Sony launched a new series of Marvel movies, a rival to Disney's popular Marvel Cinematic Universe. And the first movie, Venom, did pretty well. The second Venom movie, Venom Let There Be Carnage, did pretty well. The third Venom movie that just came out in October, not so much. But Venom seems to be the anomaly of Sony Spider-Verse. That it's done pretty well at the box office, especially when you combine all 3 movies together. It's made Sony a pretty good chunk of change over the last, 6, 7, 8 years. Whereas Madam Web just now broke $100 million. That was released in January. Kraven, released, I think, 4 weeks ago, is at 43 million. Kraven's already out on streaming. Madam Web, while it did pretty well on Netflix, well, there's a reason why it did pretty well on Netflix. Because people are already paying for Netflix, and it came up as something they could watch for quote unquote free. They didn't have to go to the theater to see it. In fact, Screen Rant has a little chart here Every Sony Spider-Man universe movie by Rotten Tomatoes score. Venom, critics hated it. Audience didn't. Audience thought it was decent. Let There Be Carnage. Critics liked it a little bit better. Audience liked it a little bit better. Morbius, bad. Audience, eh. See the trend? Madam Web, bad. Critics, 11%. Audience score, 55. Venom: The Last Dance. Critics, it fell right in between Venom and Venom: Let There Be Carnage. And it fell in between on the audience score. And then we have Kraven the Hunter. Oh, it's only been out for 2 weeks? Wow. I was wrong. I thought it was out longer than that. It's already streaming, by the way. You could already get it on Amazon Prime. You could rent it. 15% critics, 73% audience. Now, the two Spider-Verse movies, you know, the animated Spider-Verse movies, they both sit at 90% critic score with a similar audience score. And Screen Rant goes on to say here, there's some debate whether reviews actually impact the performance of movies, but it's unquestionable that word of mouth is a factor. Well, duh. I could have told you word of mouth is a factor. 1 + 1 = 2, right? Word of mouth makes or breaks a movie. A lot of people don't listen to the critics. A lot of people go to other resources to find out if they should spend their hard-earned money to go see a movie at the box office. I mean, I myself waited until Christmas Day to go with my fiance to go see Sonic 3. We didn't go opening weekend. We went Christmas Day. We went to an early show, which, by the way, was packed, to my surprise. Venom is an outlier for Sony because it took more than $850 million globally, despite scoring only 30% on Rotten Tomatoes. Likewise, movies like David Ayer's Suicide Squad very nearly crossed $750 million with just a 26% score on Rotten Tomatoes. Yes, there are going to be anomalies. Because again, people don't always listen to critics. People would rather go to see the movie and form their own opinion and then tell their friends, who will then maybe go see said movie and go tell their friends, and so on and so forth. It's called word of mouth. Every single Spider-Man spinoff performed way better in audience score terms with fairly massive swings, suggesting that the general audience did not agree with the critical consensus. Like that never happens. Throughout the last, I'll say, 50 years, going back to Siskel and Ebert, how many movies did Siskel and Ebert do where they said 2 thumbs down, but had pretty good success at the box office? And Siskel and Ebert at one time were the gold standard. How many people remember watching At the Movies every week? Because they wanted to see what Siskel and Ebert had to say about movies. That suggests that more of those who saw them, whether in cinemas or on streaming, liked the movies, which fits the trend for pretty much all movies on Rotten Tomatoes. Yeah. Suggesting that there's a correlation between those higher scores and the negative impact of earlier critical scores on the box office performance of those movies in an intriguing question, or is an intriguing question, and forms the basis of Vince Cara's argument. At the moment, Sony's plans for more Spider-Man spin-offs appear to be on ice, as they should be. Despite Venom: The Last Dance's ending setting up a bigger story for Null. What is certain is that, other than Beyond the Spider-Verse, Sony currently has no confirmed plans for more if the studio wants to retain the rights to these characters. Though the universe has to be active, whether it's rebooted or not. Well, yeah, I mean, it's not unheard of for a studio to put out a movie just so they can retain the rights to said character. Now, here's Screen Rant's take. There are several points here to consider as objectively as possible. First, are Venom, Madam Web, Kraven, and other Sony Spider-Man movies bad films? If we're talking universally, the answer is no. I'll give you Venom, but Madam Web and Kraven, based on numbers, Venom is genuinely good, even if it lacks the punch of a great villain. Let There Be Carnage is painfully forgettable. Yes, Let There Be Carnage was not as good as the first one. The Last Dance is mostly fine. Kraven has its moments, but it's mostly misguided. But Madam Web is poor, and Morbius, which Vince Cara conspicuously fails to mention at all, is notorious for good reason. So the second point they have here is about the marketing. Morbius's marketing included a Spider-Man reference that was added solely for the trailers and a post-credit scene mentioning him that went nowhere. Madam Web, Morbius, and even Kraven are odd choices for lead characters without the character whose decades of comics lore justified their existence in the first place. That's what I said in the beginning of this video. The difference between critical reviews and the opinions of normal audience members is obviously an important question because it brings scrutiny to the purpose of critics. There is not something more nefarious at play here. There may be a race to the gutter in some circles of social media and on YouTube in particular to throw out caustic negative reactions, but any suggestion of a broad strokes conspiracy theory is difficult to back up. Stoking an audience versus critics war is also a little dangerous, frankly. So there you have it. So the CEO of Sony Pictures comes out and says, these movies aren't bad. It's the critics' fault why people don't like them. Well, all I have to say to the Sony CEO is, no. It's not the critics' fault. People went and saw these movies. Some people liked them. A lot of people didn't. And they spread by word of mouth what they think. So, what do you think? Comment down below. Love to hear what you guys have to say about Sony Pictures CEO explanation for the reason why these Spider-Verse movies didn't perform so well at the box office. Also, while you're at it, please take the time, if you would, to smash that like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, hit that notification bell so you don't miss a video, share this video out to your friends and family. And with that, I will see you guys